Jamal Bowman did a great job of having the correct strategy, which is actually fighting Republicans. He pointed out that none of them voted for the COVID relief bill, and they don't get any credit for it because they didn't vote for it, okay? So you have to rhetorically explain who you are and who they are, okay? It's not just to make yourself feel better, it's so that you can get that message to the American people loud and clear, right? Biden kept talking about how, we can work together, and Republicans, and I applaud them, and they're working on their own bills, and this is not a Democratic thing or a Republican thing. Jamal Bowman said, no, it is. We all voted for it, you guys loved it, they all voted against it. He's not just correct on the strategy and the rhetoric, but he's correct on the facts. That's actually true. The Republicans did not help. They didn't help at all. None of them voted for it. So they make it seem, the mainstream media often makes it seem like, Joe Biden, like the Democrats praising Republicans is the better thing to do. Better for who? And if you're in media, how's it more accurate? It's not more accurate at all, at all. Please report the facts. Anyway, but when people like Congressman Bowman, and I love saying that, then give a speech like this, it sometimes forces the media to go, that's true, they didn't actually work together, and the Republicans did actually all vote no. He made us say it, okay? And then the rhetoric matters too. And the best part of Jamal Bowman's speech was when he said, no, please stop shooting us. Please stop killing us. And when every time a black man or a brown kid dies, a piece of me dies too. He didn't mince any words. He didn't talk about how the Republicans and Democrats are working together on rainbows and unicorns, because they're not, right? The Republicans oppose all the criminal justice reform there is. And he didn't mince words about how we need to have more funding for police, which Biden said and all the Democrats applauded, right? He said, no, you've got to stop killing us. And so there was great moral clarity in the speech. And if you watch that, it was, come on. Biden's speech was good, but Bowman's speech was infinitely stronger. And it's the most obvious thing in the world.
Okay, yeah, I agree. There's a small part, I think, about the approach that Joe Biden took. And we talked about it in the previous before he got started. There was an approach that we figured he'd have to make sure he doesn't cause too much division or too many people coming back at him and picking off of certain things that don't have much to do with the agenda and the policy that he's trying to lay out. And he put just about all of it out there. I did have some points of what he potentially missed on, and you pointed out earlier, which was Medicare for all, single payer, whichever way to actually make the healthcare system work well for everyone. So that's just one aspect that I think he missed, but I think the tone and the approach was what he needed to do. There's certain approaches and tones that work with certain folks. Like Obama's tone was this unity thing and almost preacher-like, where it almost inspired people no matter what he said. That was his strength. Joe Biden does not have that strength. Joe Biden has the down home, northwest, northeast strength of, he's like grandpa, Uncle Joe. That's why he had that nickname. Now, if Uncle Joe starts attacking Aunt Betty over in the Republican Party by name, it kind of makes you, man, Uncle Joe's mad today, and it kind of turns you off. I'm talking general, not us. General people, he has to speak to everybody. And if he knows that you're gonna get a Jamal Bowman to give the specifics of why we're doing these aspects of this agenda, I'm okay with that. That's Jamal Bowman, he did great with that. If Joe Biden did it, we'd be happy about it, but would it do much? Well, I want to get somewhere, you know? And that's not to mean we want to cater to hateful, racist Republicans, but just put out there what his agenda is about, which now we'll wait and see if it is, but to say what his agenda and his plan is for the country, and then you have to decide, do I dislike that point? Do I dislike the third point and the fifth and the seventh and the eighth? And if you dislike all those points that Joe Biden made without actually calling out names or saying, and there goes Josh Hawley with the sorry, that would have been great to see for my soul, but not great to see as far as if we'll get anywhere with that. And to discard the whole, because that's what Republicans are waiting. They're waiting to do that. They're waiting to say, you see the division of this guy, and they're doing it anyway. So at least if you continue to get yourself in front of a camera, being President Biden, and do the things that to lay out exactly what we need without any of that type of stuff involved in it, and then leave the hatred and say, look at the divisive president. And then maybe their supporters, or maybe people who are looking objectively would look and say, I hear you, but it wasn't hateful. You know, they almost have to admit what they didn't see, that because that's all Republicans have right now. Anna always talks about it. They have nothing except for these culture wars. And if you just say the agenda and leave them to the culture wars to attack you with, it's kind of not really an even fight. It makes them look like the kid in the playground kicking sand while someone else is trying to build a castle.
So, John, I'm sorry, before you go, just two quick things about that. Number one, look, I would agree with Jayar. So far, Biden hasn't done anything wrong, well, except killing the $15 minimum wage while pretending to be in favor of it. That's a big thing. But overall, a lot of the stuff is good, and a lot of his rhetoric is good, a lot of his proposals are good. And if he goes forward and then actually fights for these bills after giving a nice speech like this, a pleasant speech like this, and he lets people like Jamal Bowman fight the Republicans and empowers them, then I agree 100% with Jayar. But I'm worried that he's not going to do that. And if he doesn't do that, then the good speech then goes to waste. Because at some point you do actually have to engage in political battle. And I want to give a shout out to Sexy Speed Racer, who's a member of ours. And we do this show together, tyt.com/join. Said, why is the MSM not showing Jamal Bowman's progressive response? Why am I not surprised by that? Thank goodness for TYT. Look, that's what we do. We cover all the response. We cover the Republican response too, because we want you to see the whole political spectrum. Whereas if you watch anything on mainstream media, they shut out the progressive part of the spectrum completely. So thank you for being with us. And if you're a member, thank you for making this possible. John.
Yeah, and I think that contrast will be very clear in that, like, we can look at Biden's speech and we can identify which parts are rhetorically right, and I think we think most of it was, and then where the rhetoric starts to really diverge from the likely political path going forward. I think on MSNBC and CNN, they're gonna have a bunch of people who are gonna be like, yeah, he said the right things and he called for the right things, and they're not gonna acknowledge Joe Manchin or Joe Biden's unwillingness to actually engage directly with the people who are threatening to completely derail his legacy. They're not willing to, hypothesize about why Biden might not really be as bothered by that as you would think he would. On the responses, I think that Bowman's speech was very good. I thought his delivery was pretty good. I thought that could have been a little bit stronger, but I thought that the speech was great. With Scott, it was condescending and it was boring and all of that. But I think the one good thing that they got out of having Tim Scott there is most Republican politicians and virtually all of their media figures have largely dispensed with even the facade that government should deliver anything for the voters. Like, they keep saying that it's economic anxiety that's driving their voters, but they don't act like it, not in what they focus on. But he sort of did do that. He acknowledged some problems. He lied about the numbers and all of that, but he pretended that we can look out there, we can see that people are suffering, and here's how the Republicans disagree with Biden on how to actually fix it. In practice, they don't have solutions for any problems. Trump literally didn't even have an agenda. So I thought that was good. I thought the standout moments, though, were insane things that he said about Republican support for increased voting access and rights. I don't think anybody's gonna buy that. The people who will buy it know what the joke is and they don't want people to vote. And then his stuff about race was absolutely insane, seeming to indicate that race is bad in that I have a history that confirms it, but racism doesn't really exist. America isn't racist except progressives who are racist. And it's not that it's 100% wrong. There are people who believe that they're progressives who are hardcore racists or literally don't care, and that amounts to much the same thing. But the idea that they're the only ones who are racist, that you didn't, like, he talked about being called the N-word by progressives, and it's entirely possible that he has on Twitter and stuff like that. But we also had people storming the Capitol shouting that at black cops, and he doesn't care. He's not interested. He's willing to totally skip that over. And so those are the things that I expect and would hope that the speech will be remembered for.
Okay, so let me just finish on Jamal Bowman for a second. One, I actually disagree with you, John, on the way he delivered it. I thought he delivered it not just in a strong way, but in a way that was very real. Like Tim Scott.
I thought it was real. It was a little bit reedy. That's all.
Compared to Tim Scott, it was the most real thing I ever saw in my life.
It was way better than Tim Scott, yes.
And more real than Biden. So And by the way, our audience agreed. Rainbow Brights, a member, said this was about the Bowman speech. This was truly needed after that speech, meaning after the Biden speech. I'm happy he's providing a semi-definition of what progressives stand for. So it was necessary. I thought he did a great job with it. By the way, I'll do more shout outs for members. Kelsey, MJ1975, Alexander L, and Jonathan Swanson just joined by hitting the join button below on YouTube. You guys make coverage like this possible. I love doing the show with you guys. I thought Bowman's speech was so good that I want a progressive response to every State of the Union, and he should probably do half of them.